Move it around a bit. Looks good. Good contact. I can see through the back of the blank. I want to be able to see each of the squares, making good contact with the mirror. For a lot of people that spend time grinding the back of their blanks, I don't do that myself. Everybody has their own way of making a telescope mirror that makes them. I don't say everybody has one, but anybody who makes a telescope mirror does it differently than anybody else who makes a telescope mirror. That's a fairly reasonable thing to state. There will be one more step after this. I misspoke. I spoke about the wetting tool. What I left out, and again, this is probably more alchemy than science, but it's a method that's been used for telescope making from time immemorial, and that's going to be to, I'm just going to get some of this old pitch off the back of the mirror, was going to be to put beeswax onto the mirror. What I have to do is I have to melt this can of beeswax that I have, and then I'm going to take a small paintbrush that I've used for this purpose before, and I'm going to individually paint each of the squares on the pitch lap this afternoon, or this evening hopefully, with beeswax. And that just helps to facilitate the polishing process. I've got some nice contact here. This mat is trimmed well. I think I'm going to have a really, really good pitch lap, and a really good pitch lap is a prerequisite to polishing out to a good sphere. Now this is a very, very long focal length mirror, relatively speaking. It's an f7. f7 has a very long focal length, very narrow field of view. It's great for planetary type of observation. You don't, generally speaking, use something so long for deep space. It doesn't give you a wide field of view, but certainly wide enough to see pretty much anything that's out there. You're not going to get the full Milky Way there, but you're certainly going to get quite a bit in the way of other astronomical objects that are close space. And I like to look at Jupiter. I like to look at Saturn. I find them magnificent, and every time I look at them, I'm just more and more in awe of what I see. It's going to be a very bulky telescope to use. I probably won't use it all that often. A couple times a month now. I'm taking the mirror blank off, turning it upside down. I'm going to put it away for the moment. Let's lift off this wetting tool. Feel a square of the pitch lap. It's hardened, it's cooled down a bit. I'm going to go run this under cold water now. I'll be right back. And that will set it as I run it under cold water. Ran it under cold water for about a minute, taking a good look at it. I looked at it under the cold water. You can't see it on the camera, but I can certainly see that I have my microfacets. The pitch lap is set. I'm now going to leave it for a few hours. I'm going to go to Mass, and obviously it's Sunday, as I've indicated. I've got a bunch of family things to do today. When I get back this evening, once I've taken care of all of my family obligations, I'm going to melt the beeswax, paint the beeswax on the individual squares. The lap will have dried off by then. And then I'll be ready to start polishing. So that'll take care of it for now. We'll see you in a little while. Well, good evening and welcome back to the final installment of Making a Pitch Lap. It is Sunday, September 16, 2007. It's now about 7:46 p.m. Eastern Time. I live in Brewster, New York. This is the basement of the farmhouse that I rent. And over the last hour or so, we've been going over the steps of making a pitch lap for a 12.5-inch f7 reflecting telescope. As of now, I've got the pitch lap poured in front of me. I'm going to tilt the camera down so you can see it a little better. The final step that I'm going to embark on is going to be to cover the individual pitch lap squares with beeswax, just to facilitate the smooth processing of the cerium oxide with the pitch. I've been melting beeswax in another little paint can, similar to the paint can that we used for the pitch last night. And now I've got a paint can with some melted beeswax in it. I take a small, cheap paintbrush, dip a little beeswax on it, and just each individual square, and there's about 127 of them, just gets hit once, lightly, with beeswax. I've wiped off all the cerium oxide that was on there. Can do it fairly swiftly. Don't want to make more than one pass. Doesn't have to be any particular direction. There I go, make more than one pass. Beeswax melts at a fairly low temperature. It melts pretty quickly. Theoretically, you're supposed to use optical beeswax. I made the mistake some time ago of buying beeswax at Michael's in the town of Southeast and melted it. I was subsequently told that it was supposed to be optical beeswax. I've had no major negative implications from it. I just built a really nice 8-inch f6 mirror using my Michael's beeswax. Now that the lap has been coated with beeswax, I'm ready to go. The difference between the optical beeswax and the beeswax that you get from Michael's is basically the optical beeswax has been filtered from impurities. What kind of impurities are you likely to run into in beeswax? Generally speaking, what you're going to run into is going to be saliva and dust, neither of which are going to have a real major impact on your pitch lap as such. I've now made the pitch lap. I'm going to center it, roughly centered, on my table. Take my mirror and rinse it off. Since I didn't do so earlier this morning, it's still got quite a bit of cerium oxide on it. Got about 22 pounds of Pyrex glass here now, sort of hanging slightly off the side. Mix up my cerium oxide. Mixed about 1.